You know what I mean? That's one of the reasons why my phone's on do not disturb. I learned that from my mentor. It's like, oh, he's showing me how he sets up boundaries. He's pulling back when things are a little too much so he can focus on prioritizing his mental health so he's not snapping on his family. It's like I get to see it not just um, through him teaching me it through his words, but it's like, oh, his actions. And now we build this trust. You know what I mean? So it's the same with back in our communities, back in our neighborhoods for the youth. It's like there has to be a level of emotional equity built up relational equity built up with individuals, and that requires us to do life, man. You got to do life with people to really understand them.
It's funny because I got a friend. I don't know if he is aware that he's doing it for that reason, but his phone stay on do not disturb. And I will be like, and and it will get annoying because every time we try to reach out to him, we like, answer your phone, you ain't doing nothing, and he don't be. But I guess it's more so of a, like you said, a boundary thing. And like I said, in reality, he's not gonna say, "Oh, I'm doing this for my boundaries," but he just may not want to be bothered. You know, I don't think he would know how to express that like that. But and that's fine. You have that right, but it just will get annoying. We're trying to call you, and but that gives me a little grace in that situation to look at it a little differently. What's up, y'all? So, look, let me just go ahead and keep it short with you. Did you know that as of 2024, the United States has a literacy problem? 21% of adults cannot read, and 54% of them have been recorded and it has been documented read below a sixth grade level. That is a catastrophe. But that's where I step in. Now, I'm not going to teach the grown folks how to read and write. However, PSA, the ghostwriting solution, has now a new package. It's called the Literacy Liftoff, and it caters to 9th through 12th graders who struggle with reading, writing, and comprehension. This new tutoring service will offer vocabulary skills, teaching students how to literally write from the bottom, literally teaching them how to do an introduction paragraph, how to do a hook, how to do a conclusion, how to add a little razzle dazzle, and how to add their own personal touch to it. Okay. Now, you know what you're saying. Well, Izzy, that's what they go to school for. Absolutely. But as an ex-teacher, the teachers just don't have time. So this program has 3 different packages from 3 different sets of hours that you can take. So if you're an AP, a principal, the student who needs help, the parent of the student, or you just know somebody who needs the help. If you're in the Houston area, you can get in-person tutorials. But if you are not in Houston, there are also virtual options offered as well. So hit me up at my email, theprodigyperspective@gmail.com and or psathepodcast.com, and we will hook you up. What's going on, everybody? We back for another PSA the Mentor Podcast episode. And like I said, season 9, we give me mine is season 9. I'm gonna keep saying that. I don't care how many times you like it, don't like it, whatever. I'm gonna keep saying it because this is my season. They all my seasons, but this I feel like it's really my season. That's just how I feel. Maybe I'm tripping, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Today we have a great episode today, and it's one that I think it's going to be somewhat therapeutic for me, even as I discuss a lot of the topics today because of things that I've gone through and have overcoming and kind of getting the revelation on. So, yeah, pretty excited about that. What else I was about to say? I think that's pretty much it. Let's get it. My hood falling off. All right, let me get into this week's meme. So the meme for this week reads: "The orphan spirit lied to you, brother man. You weren't meant to carry it all alone. True strength comes from community, vulnerability, and healing." All right, inspiration comes from, which we're actually going to unpack today, a video from Cindy Trim from years ago that I stumbled back across, and this was actually listened to it before several times. I actually took notes, but it's called "Discovering Where You Truly Belong," and it talks about the orphan spirit and breaks that down. Inspiration also comes from Galatians 4:5. It says that God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive adoption as sons. Then I also got another verse I want to talk about, which is Psalm 68:5. This is God sets the lonely in families and portrays God as a father to the fatherless, highlighting his heart for adoption. All right. Now, let's go ahead and jump right into everyone's favorite segment, happy hour. Now, for this happy hour today, let me first start off by saying that it's starting to get hot outside. So when it starts getting hot outside, please make sure at this grown age, young man, that you got on deodorant. Y'all be at these events and grown as you want to be, being musty. That's ridiculous. If you just left the gym or you at the gym, all right. Because I just smell people at the gym and it's kind of like, but you have a grace for because it's like we at the gym. Let me take this hood down. Look at Little Red Riding Hood. I don't like that. But yeah, we gotta cut that out. You too old. You are too old. And if nobody would tell you, I'm gonna tell you because I love you. I love us for real, but I can't do that. And if I can smell you, it's a problem because I got a weak sense of smell. So if I'm over here gagging and can't breathe, you the problem. It's you. It ain't me. It's you. It's you. And I want you to know it's you. Because again, I love us for real. But also, what I have to add is I think that we just need to do better as men with hygiene, just in general. And it's not just smelling because again, I've heard about people spraying air freshener on their socks when they stink. I've heard about people spraying I'm thank God we delivered from the Axe phase. Does Axe still exist? Because that stuff never smell good. People will be spraying Axe on top of themselves when they get up. Axe don't smell good. Axe smell like a chemical. It is not a good smell. And if you're offended, I don't care because that's ridiculous. Axes never smell good. Now, Sauvage, that's a cologne everybody be using. That's a good one. But to make yourself stand out, you got to mix it with something else. I don't know if anybody ever taught y'all that. We're gonna get an expert on that at some point in the near future with smells and things. But if that's what you want to stand out, get you the Sauvage as a base and then layer it with something else. You be getting chose the whole night. But all right, y'all, I don't want to keep ranting because I have a great guest today. So this is a guy who we've been following each other for a while, keeping up with his stuff for a while, and he was actually on a live stream, I believe, in early 2024. And we were supposed to get it going for season 8, and we just didn't have time because he's global. So now we finally got a chance to catch him and in between sessions and things that he has going on. So he has a lot going on. He's a mental health advocate. He's a perfect person for this episode about vulnerability, if nothing else, vulnerability, and somebody that I think a lot of people look up to and should if they don't. So let me go ahead and introduce him so we can go ahead and get started. My guy.
Hey, what's going on, bro?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's been a good day so far. I was able to get some errands done, able to go to the gym, and now I'm on the pod with you. So it's been so far a productive day.
Okay, good stuff. We love to hear that. Like I said, I probably these last 2 days I've been going to the gym at night. It's actually been cool, but I don't want to make a habit of it just because it's still better during the day. But that
Yeah,
night
the
is all right too.
nighttime thing is tough. It depends because there's this window of like 3 to 6 p.m. where the gyms is just
You're
it's
done.
packed.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
done
can't
for.
stand that time. And then nighttime is like it's a little more difficult now that we have my son. It's just like so it's like I got to do the early morning thing.
Yeah, and then it also with it at night is just like because I took my little energy powder that I use, Oxy Shred, and this the one that don't make it feel like your skin about to come off. It's like a cool, mellow energy. Long
Hmm.
story short, I was laying in the bed for hours, couldn't even sleep. So yeah, I don't want to do that no more because it's just like I couldn't even go to sleep when it was time. But because I don't want to overdo it, obviously my visual people can see your name. But for my audio people, can you tell the people what's your name, where you from, and then tell them where you live now?
Yeah. Nate Evans Jr. From New Jersey, from South Jersey. Grew up in both Pleasantville and Atlantic City. Most people are familiar with Atlantic City, but Pleasantville is literally a city that's 5 minutes over. But I lived in both, bounced around either at my mom's or my dad's house. Currently, me and my wife live out in Mays Landing, though. We've been out here for maybe 6 years, I think,
Mm-hmm.
6 or so years. So we're still out in South Jersey for now. We've had some conversations about potentially moving down south. So, next time I come on, we'll see if I'm still here or not.
Oh no, for sure, for sure. You'll definitely be coming back. But yeah, that's interesting because a lot of that's what I'm hearing a lot of people want to do. Like I said, I live in Houston and I've been in Houston before it became the popping place. Like even back then, like Houston and Dallas was hidden gems, but now everybody that caught on. But I love that though, because we need to see more. You know, there's a lot of black people who thrive out here, but we need to see even more of that.
Mhm.
Okay, now tell the people what it is that you do.
Yeah, that's funny. I was just talking to a buddy of mine about that, and it's like, how do you summarize what you do because it's so much? But most people know me from the speaking consulting space. So a lot of professional speaking, been doing that for several years, all around the country. At this point, even internationally, doing a lot of educational consulting as well. And I just recently stepped into the coaching space. So I have a cohort of men under this banner called the Refinery, where I'm coaching them through their emotions, coaching them on how to process, coaching them on how to develop resilience. And as of today, we're actually in the works of finally opening up my mental health coaching because
Okay.
I'm actually qualified to teach so and different things like that. So that may be coming early April. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, those are the things that I do outside of being a husband and a father.
Okay. Okay. Now I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I'm gonna set it for the other segment. So keep the conversation, those things in mind. But
Mhm,
now, as I said today, we're talking a lot about the orphan spirit. Some people have never even heard of that. We've talking about being vulnerable and just things of that nature. So I have a few different word phrases, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. And there is no right or wrong answer. Are you ready?
mhm. Yes, sir.
All right. The orphan spirit.
Yeah, the orphan spirit, it feels like the left out child. That's what I when I hear the orphan spirit, it's like the one that feels left out, the one that doesn't feel worthy to be loved or seen or appreciated. You're the one in the downstairs basement, cleaning the clothes while everybody else is enjoying the TV and the toys. That's what I think of when I think of the orphan spirit.
Cinderella. That's what when you
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
definitely
Cinderella.
vulnerable.
Vulnerable. When I think of vulnerable, that's good. The willingness to express and expose your emotions, your imperfections, your struggles. Um, I think of deep personal connection. This is someone, seeking connection, seeking authenticity. These are the things I pull from, being vulnerable.
And then mentorship.
Mentorship. I think of counsel. I think of guidance. I think of sound leadership under somebody who has integrity.
All right. So the definition of orphan spirit we're going off of today says spiritual state characterized by feelings of deep loneliness, abandonment, rejection, and lack of belonging, often stemming from childhood experiences of neglect or unstable family dynamics, creating a mindset where someone loses interest and can feel as though they don't belong. Then we have vulnerable. It says susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. And then in the other cases is lack of another part. Then mentorship, the guidance provided by a mentor, especially an experienced person in a company or educational institution, which I like that definition because sometimes I'm really, which, and we'll have the mentorship episode later, but I'm all into having virtual mentors because for those that don't know, that is a thing. Um, yeah. All right. So let's move to the next segment, which is what does this have to do with mental health? And then always we know we break down like what does this have to do with that? So before we get into that, what is the biggest misconception that you believe men have about vulnerability?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it makes them look weak.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be the most prominent one. There is this sense of weakness when you have to, or when you feel like you're exposing yourself. And that's understandable, right? Especially if you're someone who's been misused, mistreated, disrespected. That I can see the natural tendency to not want to be vulnerable. And then at the same time, is knowing how to be vulnerable, being in a place where you're not just promiscuously just being vulnerable with anybody, like having those people where you can really share your real emotions. You can share, I'm feeling imposter syndrome. You can share, I'm feeling this guilt, this shame. You can share these things. So I think those are the factors, man. Men can feel like, hey, this makes me feel weak. And then also I don't know how to express my emotions, like in a way where it's like healthy language, where I can communicate it outside of frustration, anger, the main things. And then also having those, I will almost say like safe people in a sense. And again, there's
Okay.
no guarantees, but it's like, yo, these are the people I know that I can express these things. Like I have that group of friends personally where it's like y'all can express these things. And they've proven time and time again that they won't judge me, but they'll be here for me.
Okay. I like that point about friends. We're gonna get to that in a second too. But now you're in the mental health space, obviously, you coaching and mentorship and all that good stuff.
Hmm.
So you've been very open about your personal struggles. Anybody who's known any summit you've been a part of, any speaking engagements you've been a part of, anything that you kind of posted, people already know, they know the vibes. So about with mental health, resilience, overcoming adversity, all that good stuff. So what was the turning point that made you realize that you didn't have to do everything alone and then inspired you into mental health advocacy altogether?
Yeah, it was coming to grips. It was coming to grips and really to terms with how damaging it was for me to just hold on to this pride that wasn't helping me. I
Mhm.
had gotten to a point in my life where I realized not that I I realized I needed help, but then I had to figure out, okay, it's one thing to know I needed things, it's another thing to go ask for it.
Yeah.
And for me, I had to get to a point, unfortunately, where, or not even unfortunately, but I got to a point where it's like, let me just ask for help and let me see what happens. But I also dealt with that fear of I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be seen a certain way. I don't want to be misused, and that's the risk that you take when you are asking for help and things like that. And that's I had gotten to that point. That's when I had started going to therapy, got baptized, um, and just took that step. It was a faith step for me. It was a risk, as it is for many of us, but it was the greatest step that I could have taken in that moment. And that came from me just having a real breakdown moment when I couldn't play sports anymore, or at least for that moment, because basketball was my scapegoat. It was the thing that I ran to. I didn't have the language about emotional fluency. I didn't have the mental health resources at the time. I did what I knew. I kept quiet whenever I felt stressed or depressed or whatever the case may be, and I put all of that into those outlets. You know what I mean? Those scapegoats, but I wasn't really healing. I was kind of more so just doing avoidance work. And I
Okay.
got to a point where I couldn't avoid anymore. And it was like, yo, let me address what I'm actually feeling. Let me address these thoughts that I'm having. Let me address these things. And that was the transition. And I started to take care of myself. But then I realized how many other people around me, especially my family, were going through similar challenges and also hurting. So that's when I started to become an advocate for it. Because I'm like, man, why didn't somebody, why wasn't this a thing before? Like, why was I
Yeah.
like I've not been doing this? So for me, I got really passionate about doing advocacy work, and that, years later obviously led to me going back to school and really diving deep into this work of mental health and just mental wellness altogether.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's everyone's story is not just for themselves. Like, and let me
Hmm.
explain, like, they say we overcome by the blood of the lamb and the word of our testimony. So
Hmm.
as bad as in some cases we don't want to share things based on just how God works, it really ain't your place to say you don't want to share that.
Yeah.
But the beauty is, and I know from experience, because I never thought I would be telling people I was suicidal, none of that. But the beauty of it is he'll give you the strength to do it and even the confidence to do it. And even so much so that because you are free, that you like, no, everybody got to hear this. And something
Yeah.
you was just so afraid of to say, now it's like, no, I'm telling everybody. You know, what's the song Yo Gotti down in DM when he was talking about, F it, I'm gonna let the world know. Like, I feel like that's just really how you get to that point, and that's really where it is. And so kudos to you for being that way. Um, Something else you spoke on real quick before I go to my first point. You talked about friendships. You talked about building friendships and having that in your life now. Before we get into my first point about what does this actually have to do with mental health, why do you think men, and I want to unpack this a little more this season, but why do you think men struggle with having good men have better friends than women do? I'm gonna be a little sexist in that instance because they be having a lot of issues. But why do you think that men struggle with, I guess, maybe being vulnerable with their friends or really truly having more to their friendships than getting the hose or going getting this money, or what
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think it all boils down to like conditioning.
Mm,
Something I was sharing with my cohort of men that I'm coaching was, who taught you how to do these things? Who taught you how to respond? And I'm not saying who taught you, like sat you down, but like who were you raised by? What were you around? What were the environments? You learn by just being in the space, you know what I mean? And I think for, I don't want to say most men, but I would say just a lot of men that I know personally, it's tough to open up in those spaces because again, there's this fear of judgment. Like
yeah,
you rock with me, you my man, but you rock with me because we like the same sports team, or we go out and we go get drinks, or anytime we doing something, it's an activity to kind of escape everything else. It's like I don't want to bring my baggage in here and unpack that because you might not rock with me no more.
yeah,
And as much as many of us don't want to believe it, it's like, yo, we don't really want to be isolated like that. You know what I mean? We don't want to be in silos, even though a lot of us suffer in isolation. We suffer in those silos. We'll go through our own mental health baggage in those silos. But when it comes to us and our people, it's like, yo, I need to be solid. I need to be good. I need to be straight when I come get with my guys. And something I'm very proud of for me and my close friends is that we intentionally started to kind of break up that monotony because we were like that for a while too. Granted, we would get together and be very transparent with each other about different things. We would talk, we would laugh, we would go through all of that stuff, but there was a level that we were still missing in our relationship. And then my boy Ty, he suggested like, yo, let's all come to my house later this month on this day. Let's do it like a war and worship. And I was like, all right, what's that? And essentially we got together and we ate a little bit, but then we listened to worship music together. We cried together. We went through like different activities that allowed us to be more vulnerable in this space together amongst each other. And it was so freeing. You know what I mean? It was this judgment-free space where we were able to open up. And it actually strengthened our bond as friends. But again, everybody can't do that. Or let
no,
me say this: everybody can do it. Most people aren't trying to do it because again, there's this fear of once I put this out here, it's out here now. You know what I mean? Once you've been exposed, you can't be unexposed. So for men, there is this perception, this persona that we carry, especially with different friend groups, where it's like, yeah, I just want to stay. I've been solid, they've been solid. Let's just stay here. Like anything else. But then that leaves men who, they're around their boys, but they still feel isolated and alone. And it's challenging, man, because a lot of people won't see the cries for help. You know what I mean?
it's just so crazy because it's just something that came to mind, and then we got to move to the first point for real. But it's just because the conversation is too good. But I think that it's good that y'all had that and able to open up about that, because a lot of men won't do that. I had a panel last season, and I ain't trying to throw them under the bus, but I had two people on there who are good friends of mine, and they asked about therapy. And they said that, I don't shame therapy. It's just that I don't see myself paying for advice. And that's the narrative that most men believe, like, oh, you're paying for
Mm,
advice. But then my response is, well, if you could figure it out, wouldn't you have figured it out by now? That's just my thing. If you could figure it out.
mhm,
And so many things we've normalized, so many men, I've heard stories throughout the years of men who like say they like older women, right? And you were like, well, how did you get there? And then the one friend was said stated like, oh, I've heard more than once different occasions that they, had, sexual relations, Bill Clinton voice,
mhm,
with a woman who was 2-3 times their age when they was like 14, 15. And
mhm.
so, we laughed at it, but it was more so like laughing. I said, she a pedophile. I'm like, she's a predator. That's not okay. And I mean, we laughing, but I'm like, that it's one of them is laughing because it's so horrible, kind of like a old school Mad TV or like Family Guy joke where like that's so terrible, but it's funny because it's like I can't believe that you think that that's okay. Um,
Mhm.
but unfortunately, that's people's norms, and we need people to say, even in a joking manner, like, hey, that's not all right.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say people laugh to keep from crying sometimes too. That's
yeah,
that's one of the big. It's almost like this escapism. Like I'm gonna just laugh. I'm gonna laugh it off. So that
right.
that's real. That's real.
So the first point it says, and how does it align with mental health? How can men build stronger friendships? So according to Very Well Mind, men often suffer from limited social connections, which negatively affect their mental well-being. And embracing vulnerability helps for deeper, more supportive relationships that reduce isolation. The second one is being emotionally open is a green flag in relationships. According to the Sun, openness about emotions is increasingly viewed as a positive trait in relationships. Men who share their feelings can build stronger bonds and enhance their emotional well-being. Then this comes from the Good Men Project. Men, vulnerability, and mental health. It says, according to the Good Men Project, challenging the notion that men must always be self-reliant is vital. And embracing vulnerability leads to healthier relationships. Vulnerability leads to also stronger support system, which are key for mental wellness. So, what were some of the messages that you personally received about vulnerability when you were younger?
Um, to be honest, that the word vulnerability wasn't even like a word that I heard when I was young.
Mm,
Like it wasn't something that came up, you know what I mean? Because everybody around me was strong, or so they would say. That's what the facade was. Growing up in the hood, it's like, yo, you had to be strong, and you had to be vigilant. Your head was always on a swivel. So it's like the conversation of emotions, the conversation of vulnerability, it never really came up. In fact, if you were a young man in that community growing up and you did start to express your emotions, it's like, yo, you'd be made fun of, you'd be disrespected, you'd be called out, you'd be ostracized, all of those different things. So for me, that exposure didn't come till, later on when I made that decision to, yo, I gotta pursue like help. Like I need help. I've been holding this for a long time and I need to release this. And that's when I started to understand the concepts of like being vulnerable and placing yourself in a position to express how you feel. Where I grew up, you know what I mean? Nobody expressed that, but it's interesting. They didn't intentionally express it, but it came out as anger. It came out as, drug abuse. It came out as domestic violence. It came out as people getting killed. You know what I mean? It came out.
yeah.
It just didn't come out in a healthy way.
And that's the thing, too, because I think men forget that anger is an emotion.
Hmm.
And so when they, spazzing out, or even we look at like depression, another form of depression is easily irritated. I've been around family members who were easily irritated, and it's like you walking on eggshells because it's like you don't
Hmm.
want to say the wrong thing because you don't want them to blow up. So you like, and then you the villain because you tiptoeing, but it's like I don't want to deal with that. And I don't want to. I know how to express that. So I think that kind of leads into that. We mentioned earlier about mentorship. We've already talked briefly about supportive communities, but how do mentors and supportive communities influence paths to mental wellness and professional development? Because once again, as I said earlier, one thing about black men, I'm trying to clean it up. You know the word I want to use.
Yeah,
They're gonna
yeah,
get some money, whether the right way or the wrong way. So how could this help with, I guess, keeping them on the right path?
and you're saying like mentorships?
Mentors and supportive communities.
Yeah, I think it's crucial. It's one of those things where it's almost a necessity. I think wise counsel, even in the word of God, it talks about a multitude of counsel. I think mentors kind of falls into that as well. It's like, yeah, you need that counsel. You need other trusted voices. The unfortunate part is oftentimes, and I know communities that I was raised in, it's like those trusted voices manipulated people. They misused people. You know what I mean? You got somebody's trust and then you abused it. So it's time for those of us that are self-aware, those of us that are doing the work. It's like, this is a problem we can no longer sit back and complain about. It's like we got to step in now as the new mentors. You know what I mean? As the new counsels, the new coaches, all of those different things, while also getting what we need as well. So finding the right individuals who we can trust, who got integrity, and that requires relationship. I want to put that out there. That requires relationship. This isn't about you just meeting with a person once a month and that's your mentor. It's like, yes, and you need to develop some level of deeper relational equity with this person. Like you need to see how they live in. Do they treat their wife and kids right? Do their wife and kids even like them? Right? How are they treating
Thing.
people in their community? How are they prioritizing their mental health? You know what I mean? The people in my life, my mentors, something that I love from them, and this is powerful because they'll take step backs from things to focus on their mental health. You know what I mean? That's one of the reasons why my phone's on do not disturb. I learned that from my mentor. It's like, oh, he's showing me how he sets up boundaries. He's pulling back when things are a little too much so he can focus on prioritizing his mental health so he's not snapping on his family. It's like I get to see it not just um, through him teaching me it through his words, but it's like, oh, his actions And now we build this trust. You know what I mean? So it's the same with back in our communities, back in our neighborhoods for the youth. It's like there has to be a level of emotional equity built up relational equity built up with individuals. And that requires us to do life, man. You got to do life with people to really understand them.
It's funny because I got a friend. I don't know if he is aware that he's doing it for that reason, but his phone stay on do not disturb. And I will be like, and and it will get annoying because every time we try to reach out to him, we like, answer your phone, you ain't doing nothing, and he don't be. But I guess it's more so of a, like you said, a boundary thing. And like I said, in reality, he's not gonna say, "Oh, I'm doing this for my boundaries," but he just may not want to be bothered. I don't think he would know how to express that like that. But and that's fine. You have that right, but it just will get annoying. We trying to call you, and but that gives me a little grace in that situation to look at it a little differently from that angle.
Yeah.
What role does your faith play in recovery from anxiety and depression?
It plays everything. It keeps me sane, along with obviously my mental health practices and things I've learned throughout, being in therapy for years. It's foundational for me. It's to the point now where I'm challenging myself to believe the word of God above my own thoughts. Because sometimes my thoughts just run wild. Sometimes my thoughts are pessimistic, and it's like, yo, let me hold this truth compared to my thoughts, and do they align? If it don't align, I'm believing the truth. You know what I mean? I'm not going to continue to feed into these thoughts because they change so much. They're so frequent. You know what I mean? We have so many thoughts, so many emotions throughout a day. But the truth and the word of God, it doesn't change. So for me, I
Mhm.
go back into the word where it tells us to do not be anxious. You know what I mean? Don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. It's like, okay, I'm gonna stay present minded. Focus on these things that are pure, lovely, true. Okay, I'm gonna do that, because if not, I'm gonna focus on what's wrong, what's lacking, what I'm missing, what I'm already stressed about. So for me, it's been an anchor. Even as recent as this morning, going through a certain situation. Like, I mean, what does the word say about it? Okay, consider it pure joy whenever
Mhm.
you face with trials of many kind. You know what I mean? Because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So it's like, all right, cool. This is a trial. I'm gonna consider it joy. I'm gonna make these decisions. And for me, it's just this guiding system to help me have true peace. You know what I mean? When it says peace that surpasses all understanding, it's like, oh, I get it now. This is a peace that don't really make sense. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
With that verse, I think it's interesting because that means when it say peace that's fast, all understanding, it be people who be losing their house, losing their car, and the wife then left them, they then lost their job and lost their phone and got cut off. They get it still I rise. You still like, when it's like you ain't lost your mind. And then I've been seeing situations it was like it's nothing I can do. Stressing not gonna make it no better. I grew up in a house, where I have like older family members who have anxiety attacks about stuff they can't control. And it's like, and then it'd be situations happening to me. They're like, well, why you just, I'm concerned about you. I'm like, you wasting your own energy on me because I'm gonna be all right. Like, I get it. And I guess I don't have kids yet, so I don't get that aspect all the way. But it's still like all that stress and not gonna do nothing. I spent years doing that and it didn't help. It made stuff 10 times worse. So I might as well just sit here and do what I want to do and just be like, whatever, because if you stress about it, it's just gonna make it worse.
Yeah,
Um,
that stress will kill you, especially for men. It'll take us out.
and it's easier said than done. I'm aware of that too, but
Oh yeah.
All right, now let's go into the I challenge that section. Now, you made a comment about faith in your recovery. So again, we have to play devil's advocate in this segment to an extent. And I have to ask you, so what would be your response to when you tell people openly, well, I use my faith helped in my recovery. But what would you say to the man where faith is what put him in that position? Where he had his faith issues, or say, for instance, well, it was the famous phrase they love to use, well, the church did this to me, or this happened to me at a church, or this happened to me as somebody who was a pastor or a deacon, or this person who posts God all day on social media and then they bios and then they YouTube videos, and then in real life they did this. So what would be your response to that?
Yeah. I've gotten that a few times actually, and it's always, for me, God doesn't change, people do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? A lot of times when people are in those situations, they blame God for the mistakes of humans. You know what I mean? Flawed human beings who have emotions, who lie, who cheat, and oftentimes, um, it kind of just sways the way people feel about God. which I find interesting because, again, this is another human being just like yourself who is liable to make mistakes, who's liable to mess up. And you have to ask yourself, I think this is a great indicator to just kind of ask yourself, has your faith been put in God or in man? Because a lot of times we look at these people and they need to be pictures of perfection. And if they fall, yo, come on. I knew the whole church was fake. And it's like, yeah, that was like one or two people, fam. That wasn't the whole world. You know what I mean? That wasn't so everybody's terrible that's a believer. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Every church in America is this. And it's like, yo, that's a lot of times we we're dramatic sometimes. I'll say that. Sometimes we can be dramatic. It's like one thing happened to you or something, you were raised in this community and these things continue to happen, or you saw this at your church. And I've seen things like this growing up with churches we attended, but that's not everybody. It's not even fair to everybody. You know what I mean? It's not even fair to everybody to show up in that way. But yeah, I would challenge them to ask them, is your faith really, rooted in God, or has it been in man? Is it so, can it be so frail that if man started to mess up, you question God
Yeah.
when God hasn't changed?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting even with that because people will use those comments like, see, this one, I don't go to church. You wasn't gonna go
All the
nowhere. You
time.
just got an excuse.
Yeah, you wasn't going.
It was just you just got an excuse. Now we're going to more in depth now as we go along with this episode about the orphan spirit. We defined it, we briefly discussed it, but we're going more in depth. So the orphan spirit is the spirit that is that voice, that tells men, just or the people in general, but especially men, to just be alone. We both, I can say, we ain't even got to go in detail, seen how this has affected men. And some people have seen it, they didn't know it was a name to it, but they've seen how it has affected people and kept them isolated to themselves. And to be honest, and I don't know everybody's background, but a lot of men who I do feel like struggle with this don't. One of the fruits of it is that they don't need therapy, or I don't need that because as a man I'm supposed to do this on my own. As a man I can do better by myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people who and they said talk about people who are licensed therapists. In some cases they'd be the most insane people who in some cases don't even feel the need that they want to go to therapy because they feel like they got it all together. Not all, because I was
Mm-hmm.
actually told on my podcast, if your therapist doesn't go to have a therapist, then you don't need to be going to them.
Fact.
But I've heard some therapists, personal that, they haven't been on my podcast. Let me throw it out there. But who will say things like, I can figure it out. And then I just like, I don't think you can because you're still depressed.
Right.
But and it's not trying to make fun of depression, but it's just like what you're
That's
doing
real.
ain't working. And a lot of times people are so rooted in pride because that's pride that you don't see what you're doing is not working. Them people traveled around that mountain for 40 years. It was only supposed to take 11 days. So
Mm-hmm.
that goes to show you that what you're doing ain't working, but you think it is, but it really is you comfortable with routine. So could ask you, what are some of the biggest lies that men believe about independence? So we said it one, I can do it on my own. I don't need anybody. I'm the man. I'm supposed to, figure it out. Is there any other things you could add to that list?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about it because that's definitely one where it's like I can figure it out, or I'm supposed to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I'm supposed to have all the answers. Like I should know this stuff. I should be able to do this. Um, yeah, that's like the main ones I can think about. And that keeps a lot of men stuck, man. Feeling like you're supposed to figure this out alone. I don't need the help. You know what I mean? I don't need the help. I don't need this. And it's one of those things where it's deep rooted in pride. For a lot of men, pride almost feels like the last thing that they have control over in a
Mm-hmm.
world where there's so much chaos and so much hate towards men and different things like that. So, yo, my pride is all I got.
Yeah.
And it's like pride comes before the fall, too.
Yeah. They don't want to hear that conversation though.
Hmm.
All right, so let's move on to the last segment for today, which is the weekly sabbatical. And in this segment, we kind of just reminisce on some things. So I got a lot of notes here. First question I will ask is, how does faith therapy and or personal development help men redefine what strength really looks like?
Yeah, one, it kind of helps you to debunk what you think strength was, which is holding everything in, which is just physical strength, looking strong. It's actually way more difficult to be transparent with another individual, to be vulnerable with somebody else. That takes real strength. A lot of times for men, there's a tension that builds up when we're about to share some stuff. I was just on the phone with a buddy of mine before this, and he shared some stuff, and I've known him since we were in like diapers. And he shared some stuff with me today that I never heard him share, but he felt like he was finally in a space where he can be strong enough to say that, in a space where I wouldn't judge him. So That's a big one. But in regards to just faith, all of those different things, they help you to put the pieces together, man. I think we got to realize that we need to be able to put the pieces together so we can move forward. It helps you to look back in hindsight to really see those dots so you can start to move forward. What are the things I need to unlearn? What are the patterns that I'm having? You need to be able to put them things together. And then the beautiful part about therapy and all of this is that while it won't fix you, it'll give you the tools and the insights and the resources to take to prayer.
Mm,
Oftentimes you praying, God, just heal me, God, heal me, but you haven't been specific enough.
yeah.
You know what I mean? You're very general with your prayers. And I was like that for a while. And it's like, okay, let me unpack some of this trauma. Let me unpack some of these things. Let me go back so I can unlearn some of these things. Let me take this to prayer. And now that I've unpacked it, I've taken it to prayer. Let me replace it with these things that the word of God says. And then also these practical tools. Let me start journaling. Let me start these affirmations. Let me just do these things now. I think all of it together is just, it's a powerful culmination to really help us heal and grow and thrive as men.
Definitely. Good stuff. Okay. Being specific in prayer, I really like that one. I really like that one because I was reading a book the other day, John Ecker's The Prophet's Manual, and it was something he said in there that I had highlighted and it like said, turn this into a prayer point. So I
Mm.
definitely am big on that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and I promise, so I've been rewatching the video. The video is actually from 2017. It was on YouTube, and I've seen it come through several times. And this is my first time actually sitting through it and taking notes. And this is from Dr. Cindy Trim, and the video was called "Discovering Where You Truly Belong." And in this clip, she described the orphan spirit. So these are things that I dealt with, and if you dealt with any of this, y'all may listen because it may be a video you might need to check out. So she talks about the child grows up with the wiring of their brain off. Now, not literally wires hanging out your brain, out your head, but like the way you think is a little off, and that's a good thing sometimes too. So it's not always bad. But so let's keep going. She says building connections are difficult. Struggles with vulnerability are awkward. She said they come off as awkward, but they're really just socially conscious. And I definitely think that's something with me because it'll be times I'll be talking to people and I'll say stuff because I'm an extrovert. Everybody brag about being introvert. I'm an extrovert, so I'm open with that. But I do sometimes find myself, I think, overthinking what I'm about to say next, and then it just make it awkward because I'll do something awkward. This is something that has always been a struggle for me: being open, transparent, dealing with bitterness, resentment, revenge, and unforgiveness. A lot of people don't. We brag about holding grudges, but really that's a problem. And we've, especially men, have, especially them old school men, to brag about, oh, I'll never talk to them again, and and I think we think that's a power thing. I think we think that's a dynamic, like I'm gonna show you, and that's being the most masculine thing.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, it says the independent Lone Ranger. This is what she quoted. And she said, this is somebody who you may know some things about them, but you'll never know everything. This is a person who, they're always in part of groups, but they're still really to themselves, even if they have groups of friends. And that's something that definitely has been me. I am my only child too, so I'm sure that's a part of it. But, I think that a lot of it kind of stems from that. She says, we'll shut down and tend to hear things wrong. At this point, I don't really shut down, but there have been instances where I've caught myself before hearing something wrong, because a lot of times we think somebody is saying one thing and they're not. So you really have to process. And this is something I'm pretty good at hearing and listening. Who's saying what, and then what did they mean by that? Because sometimes they could just have said it in a way, but then I kind of, okay, they might have said it a little harsh, but was they wrong? That's my favorite question to ask me. And like, before you get offended at what they say, was they wrong?
Right,
Yeah,
right,
maybe it could have worded it better, but really, was they wrong?
right.
And this is the point I like what you talked about, prayer points. It's talking about must heal from an identity crisis and come into the spirit of adoption. So in this case, if this is something you struggle with, this is the point where you take that to prayer and get those verses about adoption and sonship and being accepted into the beloved, and do that. So it's funny how he said what he said, and then it just align like that. So keep that in mind. So growing up, you had many life experiences that have shaped you to where you are and doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Before I go to my last points, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now?
It's a great question. So much that I want to give my younger self. I think if I could give my younger self something right now today, it would be to have grace for yourself. I feel like when I was younger, you're a kid, you're learning, you're a teen, you're learning. I feel like I was really hard on myself
Mm-hmm.
about a lot of mistakes that I made, about a lot of things I felt mentally, emotionally. I was just really hard on myself. And if I can go back and even share those words, it's like, man, have some grace for yourself. Like you're figuring life out one step at a time. Even now, I'm older, got a family. It's like I'm still learning. Like this is all every day is a new day. It's all new to me every single day, all of us. I would definitely tell him that to have some grace for yourself.
Okay,
That's a big
good
one.
stuff. Good stuff. And I think I could relate with that too, because for me it was like people was hard on me and I was hard on myself. So
Right. That part.
now, unfortunately, I don't want to say it's a defense mechanism because I'm still unpacking it, but like I'm as extra and over the top as I am, I'm also still very nonchalant. And my nonchalantness is just like part of it, I think, is a defense mechanism, but part of it, I think, is deliverance to an extent, because instead of overreacting to things, I'm just kind of like, whatever. And with being nonchalant, there have been instances where I've been in jobs or had situations. People's like, well, it's just like you don't care. I'm like, everybody not gonna react the same. So it's like,
Yeah. You want me to be angry or frustrated? It's like, nah, I'm not about to do that.
because even with you kind of like laid back, nonchalant, like
Yeah,
it's like what?
it's gonna be all right.
So you've heard that before too, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was like one of the traits people say, like, oh, you really laid back, kind of like a nonchalant. It's just like
You
I'm
don't
not about
care,
to let myself. It's not that I don't. I really, actually, really do care, but I'm not
right?
about to. I ain't about to die right here.
Yeah, exactly. So now this is some other points that y'all can turn into prayer points before we end off today. And this is coming from 11 contrasting traits between orphan spirit and the spirit of sonship from Joseph Matter.org. And I'll have that in the bio so y'all can look that up, because we're not going over all 11 and we're not going over all the descriptions. But we're going over the ones I thought were the most important. So insecurity and jealousy versus love and acceptance. An orphan spirit operates out of insecurity and jealousy, whereas the spirit of sonship functions out of love and acceptance. Jealousy of brother success versus commitment to brother success. An orphan spirit is jealous of the success of their brothers, while mature son is committed to the success of their brothers. Something I know, and even back in the day, and I used to be real kind of like jealous when I would see people succeed and get to places I feel like I should be. But for me, I knew I was good when I'm watching somebody I know personally go up, and I'm watching them go up, and I'm checking their page like it's my page, looking at how they growing, and I'm excited for them. So when I saw that
True.
recently, I knew, I was like, dang, like you ain't even like that no more. And even when I was a little jealous, I hid it well. But now it's like I'm really happy for them.
That's good.
Striving for approval. This is a big one. Striving for approval versus serving from acceptance. An orphan spirit serves God to earn the Father's love, and a mature son serves God out of a sense of divine acceptance and favor. As someone who grew up in a household that was Hebrew Israelite, I think this is something big, because that's how they think. They think you have to do every law, every rule, and everything, but they don't get it from the fact of that you don't have, it don't have to be like that.
Yeah.
This is one big, especially for men, driven by need for success, led by the spirit. And an orphan spirit is driven by the need for success, where the spirit leads the mature son into his calling and mission. So when you're called to do something, God calls you, you won't always see success right away. And sometimes he's going to call you to do things that don't make sense. You might be posting regularly every day on social media. It's just an example. God might say, go into a 40-day fast, shut social media down. You like, but how am I going to get my stuff out there? How is anybody going to see me? You have to think with the God mind and the call and the mission and being submitted to where, when God's logic don't make sense to the human mind.
Right. That part.
Using people as objects versus serving people to bless the kingdom. An orphan spirit uses people as objects. Mature sons serve people to bless the kingdom, having a servant's heart. Then the last one, competition versus others versus blessing others. An orphan spirit is always in competition with others, while a spirit of sonship is always blessing others. And it is a blessing to be a blessing. So finally, my last comment I'm going to ask you, what are some small but powerful steps that men can take to become more open and emotionally available, even starting the day?
Yeah, that's good. First things first, I need that list. That list of what you had. That list was fire. I need
I'm
to.
going to send you the link.
Yeah, please do. I want to run that by some of my men. But yeah, some of the things you can do just starting today. I want you to understand this for the fellas that are listening. You have to play a part in your own rescue, and you have to get to a point where you advocate for yourself. Super, super important. And you do that by starting to speak up with the individuals that you feel safe with. It might be trial and error. This might be a homeboy, somebody you close with. This might be a spouse, another friend. But it's like, yo, you gotta at least see what would happen. Try, take the risk of at least attempting to express your emotions. I think that's the biggest first. I think people are afraid to make that first step because you've already talked yourself out of it, because you've already made this scenario in your brain of how it's going to play out. And it's like, hey, don't, this ain't the time to overthink right now.
Yeah.
This is the time to find that person that you said you trust and relay this to them in the best way that you can. You know what I mean? Start small. Just share, yeah, hey, look, I've been feeling a little off lately. I'm not 100% sure what's going on, but I've been feeling like this. Like just start small. And as you grow through that, you'll start to develop the language and you'll learn more. But instead of overwhelming you with several different steps, just start. They always say, and this is just a gym analogy, but they say that the heaviest weight to lift when you're someone looking to go to the gym is the front door. It's like, yeah, just get through the front door. We'll get to the bench press and the squats and all that at some point, but I need you to show up consistently through that front door. I need to see you in the room. So find those individuals who you trust, who you love, where you feel like, yo, I can at least start to share some of this so I'm not hoarding it. Because what happens is, as men, we become these hoarders. We hoard this stuff, and over time, it needs to come out, and it's going to come out. This is why we see young dudes in the street, robbing people or shooting people, whatever the case may be. It's like it has to come out at
Yeah.
some point. But if you don't allow it to come out in a healthy way, where you're
Mm-hmm.
able to communicate it, it'll come out as anger, like we shared earlier. It'll come out as abrasive behaviors, all of those different things. But I think that's the main, I would say that's the main and first step right there. Let's start there. And then from there you can assess, like, hey, can I share more with this person over time? Or is this maybe not the person to share this with?
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't like the way they responded. And like
Definitely.
I said, it just starts with that, like getting to the point where we want to talk real strength, getting strong enough to go ahead and just express that. And again, from there, you just evaluating, like, yo, how did they respond? Did he take that? He start looking at me weird. You know what I mean? And then ask questions like, hey, hopefully this doesn't change your view of me. And you'll be
Yeah.
able to discern right there if it does for somebody. You know what I mean? If you feel like they're judging you, if you feel like they're not really seeing or hearing you. But this again is a great test to see who really loves you for you, despite your flaws. It's a great test for that. But yeah, I would say that that first step, man, is crucial, and that's the one that most people, most men that I know, just aren't taking yet because they feel like it's going to diminish the image that they've spent their entire life building as a protection mechanism, and all the while they're suffering in silence.
That's a great way to end it off. Question or challenge: do you struggle with being vulnerable? If so, Maggie, I've been on it this season, y'all, with these question and challenge. Remember, you win money when you answer. So, well, you put yourself in the running to win money more times the more you answer. So, if it's for a month and you answer 4 times, then that's 4 chances you win money. Remember, it's $10, 15, and 25
All right,
on the
okay.
Cash app. So first place, second place, third place at the end of each month. Okay, good stuff. Anything else you want to add, pub, or say before we close out today?
Yeah, I would want to say to especially to the men listening, man, you're seen, you're heard, you're loved. Um, we believe in you. The challenge is for you to believe in yourself. The challenge is for you to start to advocate for yourself. For the women in our lives, we thank you. We thank you. Continue to just have grace for us as we grow. A lot of us weren't taught how to express our emotions, what it really means to be a man, any of these different things. So we're learning in real time while having the responsibilities of men. So please continue to have grace for us. That doesn't mean let us off the hook. That doesn't mean allow us to abuse you, but just have grace for us. And every once in a while, if you can, just share an encouraging word. You never know how far it goes for a man who desperately needs it.
All right, good stuff. All right, y'all. That is it for today. Thank you, my boy, for pulling up on us at the PSA podcast.
Yes, sir.
PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And as always, remember, and I mean it, I love us.